Thank you for tuning in this morning. This is the Navajo Nation Office of the President and Vice President Agency meeting regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. And today we're meeting with the Northern Agency chapter officials. And without further ado, most of our meetings, we start off with the invocation. And at this time, Shane Kodo to the Zindlini, the Nito Ada Kata so Gizi Nazindin Nothini, though Kayapanat Ani Nothini, Ado the not Gloshibinat Ani, Ado Kehona out, Ado that is not Ani Kuchin, that's so Gizi Head Hidi Nidole. Kodoshe to the Zindlini il neto let Tilade Kedo that's a Dani Shiaj Andro Vice President, Mr. Myron Lizer. You have the floor, Shiaj.
Oh, yes, Ma. Oh, thank you. Yate Bene. It's good to be with you all here today, Thursday, April 29th. Our president is on the road. He'll chime in here in just a bit here. So we appreciate you all joining us for this Northern Agency American Recovery Plan meeting. So as we always do, we open up with prayer. So let's bow our heads. Yeah, dear God, Holy God, Creator, Yahweh, Great Spirit. You are known by many names, and Lord, we come to you and ask for your healing upon the land, your blessing upon the land. Lord, forgive us our sins, forgive us our trespasses. Father, as we take up the burden of others, Lord, we pray for your great wisdom. We pray for knowledge, Lord, and our professionals here, our cabinet members, our leadership, Lord, that we all work together and that we all come to resound conclusion, Lord, based on your will for your people across Deneta, the land in which you set us here on. We are still here, Lord. There was a reason. What was your original intent, Lord, for First Nations to occupy North America, Lord, a place known as Turtle Island? Only you know, Lord, the original intent, Father. So we give this time to you. We ask for your wisdom in which to spend all of these monies. We thank you, yeah, dear God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Thank you, Dr. Fowler.
Shiaj Kadona Hatsuna Dinzani. A chain Nasna Hodoljish ADA Atalate Nat Ani Dan Lenny Ado Shina Asian Kodo welcome address to Gisipini Yehi Kodo Yen Kodo Here Hanada so Gizo. At this time, most of you are on mute. We will provide the welcome address from our president, our speaker's office, and also our Chief Justice office. Thank you. Mr. President, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fowler. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Great. Just testing our internet capability here. If you could see, I'm on my way to Navajo Mountain. Today we're talking with the state of Utah on the Navajo-Utah Water Rights Settlement Act with the San Juan County Commission. And we are on our way there. This is the backdrop, Navajo Mountain, and then one of the canyons, side canyons of Navajo Canyon that reaches into Lake Powell. Beautiful area. Just wanted to let you all know where we're at. Jonathan Nez, Indo Shihin Shlon Tratnesan, Ebashin, Twitchidi, Edashiro, Trachidi, Edashanella, so yate. Tanihidi Nido Lesh Arnold Soka Northern Agency Jinat Ani no Linigi Ado I need agency officers electedasha Dr. Keba Bigay, President A Salito, Vice President A Darren Yellowhorse, Secretary A Matthew So Shanantano Linigi Yat Aro Biniye Kwa Sahi Keki Yati Peso Washington that the Hichidet Aya CARES Act. A Kodo Nashigido Peso Chos Indigi. A Hichashane that the Nick Sepi Nesnet Tindo Bahati at the Milso. And that's how a peso. nije kolya the 2020 kahata aro ade 2021 biye in dajnish basically chiro tokon naskudalia cistern projects bathroom additions aro the agi ya broadband telecommunication ba John dalnish dolesa no ahot ya adalia aro sa peso aro chose indigido jabini nagi deadline adalia ko aro babiga tazligi asati kuje hardship assistant will yego aje peso shteni neldo kon hikeni neviche kuliaya ishi check gi padas dons do joshi chudayos kon hikeni hidna ado haleta hailabini na aro jo la best chi do to adalia da shi wins jo lihini hebaz ani la hada de taya aro Washington jido ahot regulations do policy da tagi jo dai nesa da ani je hada so zi o khayu bez ani hada de ta josh da do lish tani hito ne even that enal sos hatilia kuje the cabinet members dan division directors bisante clear atslete dan enal sos kadelia Johnny not ani pada si neldo adek bananish Washington Kenshin has large President Biden do kere Dasitagi Vice President Harris not suspect Codelia Juk adazet Khan is not ani nahan long so could ya bez ani jo do kasto estenta dorni ikudo ni beso belas the American Rescue Plan Act will yagi could at skilloko pinda annesto lelti lana dani zenigia khuda nana best chi nana naskoda dorni jo lana dani zhaganda da dorni no jo ato digi arpa de niki atoni hiche kolne and the US Department of Treasury Washington a formula aliao di ya peso chudo atli bakagi shiji di shladin ha zogo ni to ni do go anta peso ni hiche kudo ni akon he kat shtada dil ne ni he kana znala pesto ni he keni hidne pesh you nadi kid haloya kana znalagi nda idosh kid peshpas an shanda tleo akon ni hisha da nia kana znala aino shenigi do aren hi keni hidne da istagi ni hido ye kan yezad do tsil da nafsini jo ebni ye kata ho ashla EJA Northern Agency. So I thought Western do Fort Chinle Eastern Adelia. So Shlauhat Ata Ilia. So Eshi do Ihachashane de Leto cares like bindaj do as ani do kasan and aro kadare peso that's that's your kasone April be May that's a be she out of Washington that infrastructure building no in yes so aimed at King George and that was no by that even yeah study now jungle study no and gawi ashkirosh no ado here ade naki do da is Allah ni kon ki keni ki na ka od do taya funa skadalia aro electricity do bed has need to the broadband you can china and then the has the internet telephone da junu gonda nisto le no a atalia ako tishe ya tsagi ya sahi le to aron nane gishi edi na ya bawan adadol ni to nas dadol ni nani ishi to bande ti do le aro pesi chi do thodishni ya neka do intuition do tra sande le to le e nasko Desiro da zanando le lo da to person hiche chide wata ya da di lista di no so wata sa se kli to hijo bainch kesh ke no sini jogo ala hanne hallo do the neck at yatil ti do bilgana ke yatil ti o yo hadanna ya ebini na ni hikodo ta na zano sani ka do cha jo ba da hasna akon ki keni hinna the neck at I could jo bespeda hazen dolle any hidden. So so she the neck actually hit a seat dolle. I just want to say to you that today's meeting, the ARPA meetings, is just to get an update. This is the first meeting that's open to agencies, all 5 agencies. I know there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, especially when the council had their work session. A lot of officials said, why aren't we a part of this discussion? So we wanted to make these types of sessions to get you updated, not just on the monies that are coming in, but also for the monies that have already come in. So today, if you have the agenda before you, Dr. Fowler, Dr. Perfilia Fowler, be our facilitator today. So we ask for your attention, your respect, as well as we do our very best to put on a productive session. Our Vice President gave the invocation. Thank you, Vice President, for that. And then our welcome address from the 3 branches, the 4 leaders. And then we'll go into the update of the CARES Act. I know there's a lot of questions out there. How were the money spent? $714 million came to the Navajo Nation. And there were some deadlines. Some of the projects weren't complete. So some of those monies reverted back into into the hardship assistance fund. For the hardship assistance fund, over $314 million were sent directly to our Navajo people. So they have received checks, and we're just hoping and praying that our Navajo citizens use that to pay their bills and get their needed necessity throughout this pandemic. And the CARES Act fund, there's another allocation that may be coming into, that will be coming into the Navajo Nation. Our recommendation for that is to put that money aside for those individuals that didn't get the hardship assistance checks. There's been some people out there that have said that my application was lost or I didn't get my application in time. We want them to be able to receive some assistance as well. The other thing, the other dollars that we would like to put aside for is the businesses. The deadlines were changed, and because of the change in the deadline, not all the businesses were able to receive. Federal government, our Navajo Nation. We sent out a white paper, our recommendations to the White House and to our congressional delegations on updating some of the federal regulations and policies so infrastructure can be built quicker. Not just a temporary fix, but a permanent fix into the future so that projects can get done. You know, right-of-ways are difficult at times to get. You got to do all these clearances. And, you know, we got to change those laws or else we're going to be bombarded with all those processes. And the other thing, too, here on the Navajo Nation, we're also wanting to change some of our laws and regulations. And so we're going to be talking about that. Paulson and Garrett will be giving a presentation on that. And then we'll go into American Rescue Plan Act, Santee Lewis. This will be an overview of how much money is being expected to go out. The U.S. Department of Treasury has yet to develop the formula. We submitted to Treasury saying that the formula, the distribution of monies to the tribes should be based on 4 categories. One is population. Second is how large the land base is for a tribe. Third is the employees of the nation or the tribe. And fourth, how hard hit the tribe was throughout this pandemic. And if we were to get something close to that in the formula or something similar to the CARES Act formula, we're looking at about 1.5 to about $2 billion of America Rescue Plan Act monies coming into the Navajo Nation. It's not here yet. Treasury is still talking about it, but we're getting together right now to begin the plan so that we don't get caught off guard once the monies come in. And we're looking at maybe May or maybe June in receiving these dollars. And just hope we don't have to file a lawsuit against the federal government again like we did on the CARES Act. So we're looking forward to the Treasury to get that done. And after that, we'll go into the DCD presentation. You know, there's going to have to be a process, right? And a lot of our Navajo people and our chapter officials are wanting to get projects. You know, there's a lot of needs. There's more needs than the money that's coming in, that will come in. And so it has to be vetted. And we have to vet these projects. So new projects, they're going to be difficult. But if we can get all the clearances and all the processes in place real quick, maybe by year 3, we can get these projects completed. And so a lot of the projects are already in the ICIP. And those projects are on the list. We just need to double check to make sure that they're on the list. Once that's done, we go into questions and answers for each and every one of you. And again, just please be respectful and not to be too long on the questions, but Dr. Fowler will be facilitating that part of it. And then the closing remarks will be by J.T. Willie. I said in Navajo that this is just the first of many sessions that we'll have with you all. This is just to give you an overview of the federal monies or the monies that have been given in relief and rescue to the U.S. citizens. It's not just tribes, it's everybody. And then the next steps would be to talk about economic development. You know, our vice president is leading the economic recovery work group for the Navajo Nation. We're going to also have to have another meeting on infrastructure, have NECA, NTUA, IHS, BIA involved in those discussions. And we will move forward in anticipation of these new dollars. Of course, lastly, the infrastructure bill is being debated as we speak in Washington, D.C. If that gets approved, you'll be seeing monies coming in for infrastructure once again, too. And that's for roads, our aging bridges, and this is all for everyone throughout the country. And of course, the Indian country as well. So I welcome you to the Northern Agency American Rescue Plan Act session to give you an update. And we ask each and every one of you to be engaged in these discussions, because once the money comes in, it's going to be pretty quick, because we want to get these projects completed for our Navajo citizens. So thank you for the prayers, and thank you. And in return, we also thank you, and we pray for you each and every day, chapter officials from the Northern Agency, all the leadership out there. So thank you so much. I'll make it quick again. I'm at Navajo Mountain. We're going to be talking with San Juan County Commission today to talk about the Navajo Utah Water Rights Settlement Act. But I'll be listening in on these discussions throughout the day. So thank you so much. God bless you. And God bless our great Navajo Nation. I'll turn the time back over to Dr. Fowler.
Pradon Nido Nananas Kedo Shiaj, Honorable Vice President Mr. Lizer, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Fowler, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. President, we appreciate your leadership here during this pandemic, and you are doing an outstanding job. And as we convene in a meeting with the Northern Agency here, we appreciate you all, the leadership, President Kaibaba Gay and others. We recently met with you and your chapter there to look at some feasible economic development and business development. So maybe through this CARES or ARPA, American Recovery Plan monies, that there could be some projects that bring needed business development to your area, your agency. So we appreciate it. And again, we're all in this together, but earlier we opened up in prayer, and we appreciate that. We need to give our plans to our Lord, but we also appreciate the collaborative effort of our cabinet level. But as we come forward into it, the President mentioned that I do chair the Economic Recovery Work Group. I appreciate him appointing me, and we are having many meetings and finalizing those plans and seeing what all that money coming to the nation would look like. Vice President Lizer here, Comanche Nishle, 1200 buses, Chin, Do, Comanche Deshache, Glash Deshanelli. It is good to be with you here on this ARPA planning meeting. So, Scripture says, commit your work to the Lord, and your work will be established. Another translation says that you will be successful. And it is certainly our desire, our prayer that you all, Northern Agency, are successful in the implementation of these new monies coming to the Navajo Nation. A tremendous amount of money. We are definitely blessed. Sometimes, especially as bad as COVID was to the Navajo Nation and to Indian country, God, our Creator, can take something that was meant for bad and turn it for good. And we appreciate it. We're grateful and we're thankful that these monies have come to us. So now we get to work, and we need to work together to fashion a plan for this. So here we are. Many of you have asked for a seat at the table, and this is where we are at this juncture. Hopefully soon we'll know how much the funding will come to the Navajo Nation. But we've talked about recovery, right? Recovery. The Biden-Harris administration, as you well know, has sought the phrase and the theme of building back better. Well, that means that you were actually there. You've been there before. And our Indian country and the Navajo Nation, as we've never had, the amenities and the infrastructure development that the rest of the United States has had. And so we are, well, Vice President here is calling it the Great Catch-up. All these monies coming to the Navajo Nation, we can catch up decades of lagging, of inequity, for money and funding for viable infrastructure projects, whether it be water. And the President just said he's up there in Utah going over some of the developments for the Navajo Utah Water Rights Settlement, which was recently signed into law. So advancing bit by bit, incrementally improving and enhancing the quality of life here on Navajo And so we appreciate those opportunities as the Nez Leiser administration during this time would not only see a pandemic, but would also see the monies coming. So what can we all and you all bring to effect? What can we bring to change our quality of life here on Navajo? So not only water, but electrical power to those farthest reaches of our Navajo Nation. And we're at this moment in time to actually do that. So again, we're thankful. But not only that, in this great catch-up, this pandemic has magnified all of those issues that we've had, the lack of water, the lack of infrastructure. And so our main Nez Leiser priority is to hang as much fiber optic cable as we can, to bury as much fiber optic cable as we can, to bring internet and Wi-Fi again to the farthest reaches of our Navajo Nation. And you all are going to help be a part of that. We also need water. We need electricity to those same areas. We need economic development. During the pandemic, we've seen a lot of our citizens having to travel great distances to border towns to get needed supplies, to get lumber and building material and hay and feed and the like. What if we had all that here? And so as we prepare potentially for the next pandemic, what does that look like for economic and business development? One by one, we need to entice those entrepreneurs and businesses to come back to the Navajo Nation. We need to create an environment that's conducive to good business. And you all know that we, the Nez Leiser, has challenged our people to buy Navajo, buy local. And as we talk to the Northern Agency, the 491 corridor and the road going east and west through there from Farmington to Kayenta through Shiprock. Shiprock is a vital area, the largest community on Navajo. Wouldn't it be great if you had hay and feed and lumber and building material and a hardware store and a clothing store and furniture store and all appliance stores? We have the need for all these things. And so start thinking along those lines, and we will again be discussing economic development for your region there and your agency. And lastly, housing. We need housing, and we needed it yesterday. And so Nez Leiser is working on a plan along with our Veterans Director, Jim Zwerline, to bring a Hogan octagon housing to the area and to build it in such a way that it's less expensive and it's timely, and we'll pump these homes out as quick as we can, as soon as we can. And so again, we're all in this together. We appreciate your prayers. So we need those prayers and your cooperation and input into helping leadership bring all of this to fruition with your help. So again, President Jonathan Nez and myself, we continue to pray for you all, and we look forward to working with you and giving us all the opportunity to see these monies come to the nation, to work effectively, and to work collaboratively, developing a synergy and bring in a great advancement to the Northern Agency. So we appreciate you. Let's make it happen. Thank you, Dr. Fowler.
Yeah, she kadon hichahanansi na hone ya she lini speaker Seth Damon akone panas aro besh bahasa an lato ya sutado ya yalti akwa paso to IC nahat anlini do sahalehi banat ilte. Speaker Damon, are you on the line? Tata pachatot zihi Shapahanatzi Chief of Staff Sherlyn Yazi or Melinda. Anyone from legislation?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Oh, Shicha'at, go ahead. You have the floor. Shia.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Dr. Fowler. This is Melinda Arvizo Siaco, Legislative Staff Assistant for Speaker Damon. And we are on the call today. Nskago nihi not ani behadaso ziigi do tirizinigi be alyagi And good morning to Northern Agency. I know that everyone on the line is definitely been working hard on putting together all of your priorities and your action items for the anticipated funding allocation that will be coming to the nation. Ko Speaker Damon benachet ba hetani zindo ya benedadi nido lish Tna Jenny Shlonki ani bashichin ado nana Twitchini dasha che dot dash chini dasha nala ko dao eya dana astan shlido ado di ben bigit hayish kanigi eya ashto o hot ao e dahotil zin dat do yat e do hya dadidi ni we joined the call, so we will be participating here through the webinar, through this WebEx meeting. We have been on the agency calls this week with you all and look forward to working with all of the divisions and programs throughout the nation in terms of working together to provide technical assistance to the chapter. So we look forward to that, and we have that support and encouragement from Speaker Damon's office, and knowing that there is going to be great opportunities for the nation. Ako ekot alban sede kesigi ashtopen nachet eya so thank you. And then finally, to just state, as Dr. Fowler, you mentioned, Shada, that the NABC Etiquette Committee is resuming today at 10 o'clock. And so Speaker Damon is preparing to be on that call to facilitate with his colleagues in the 24th Navajo Nation Council. Today's work session subject is with the enterprises, Navajo Nation enterprises are going to be coming to the NABC Etiquette Committee through Zoom, and it will be also live streamed, YouTube and Facebook, so that if anyone has an opportunity to also chime in on that to hear from our tribal enterprises, you're more than welcome to. Just wanted to mention that as well. Dr. Fowler for facilitating the calls today and throughout the week. And as Vice President Leiser mentioned, that there will be more conversations, discussions, and dialogues. So ko ashi nasko hotao eya nahat anlinigi anita skinde nisho eya adolni. So thank you very much. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Speaker Damon's office, for providing a little bit of commentary, support, and encouragement. Nana of Northern Agency, good morning. Have a good rest of the day, and we will be on the call to help support. Thank you.
Shadeja. Juno Hain zi don his ishtan indla. Jobot aje asahalle. But itlanid lehi banik. He had hidden me arden he page bars on a days and she stop. Arje she stop nada ikisole. Nana nas a yadi has kept as arjen Hima Chief Justice Joanne Jane. A dot hashing took a banana squalno. Go hold just stop. Arje Asa Yahanats stop. Stephen at City, will you be representing our Chief Justice this morning? Shiaj?
Can you hear me? This is Steve at City.
Oh, Shiaj, you have the floor.
Members of the Northern Agency Council, elected officials all across our Northern Agency chapters. Mr. President, Vice President, and representatives from the Speaker's office, Shema, Dr. Fowler, J. Stephen B. at City, Administrative Director of the Courts within the Navajo Nation Judicial Branch. This morning, on behalf of Honorable Chief Justice Joanne B. Jane, I'm offering simple welcome message and expression of appreciation for being on this conversation between all of these leaders and to provide support and a message of cooperation from the Judicial Branch, the third branch of the Navajo Nation government. The Judicial Branch, as you know, we have gone through this pandemic just as everybody else has. We have had to close our court buildings, but we never ceased operations. Going back to last March, we reduced our workload down to only essential cases, and we've been operating at those levels all over a year now. We hold all of our hearings remotely, either through the telephone or through our internet, and we're looking forward to resuming more than essential services, and we're doing our planning processes to get back to providing more in-person, face-to-face court services and probation, parole services, and peacemaking program services to our people. We have utilized CARES Act funds last year to respond to the pandemic and the health and safety concerns for our personnel, for our facilities, and to do our part to help reduce the spread of the coronavirus in our communities where we have court buildings or court facilities. We have 13 district courts, and in Northern Agency we have our Shiprock Court in downtown Shiprock, and then to the west we have our district court in Aneth, Utah. And so the judges there continue to work with their staff to provide these essential services, which highlight the need to respond to emergency cases as well as the statutorily required cases that have to be heard and that have statutory time frames. So we continue to do our work. We've used the CARES Act to improve access through telecommunications for people to continue to raise their concerns and get their needs addressed by the courts. We look forward to working with the Navajo Nation and everybody on the American Rescue Plan. As far as the CARES Act goes, last thing I'll state about that is that the Judicial Branch did receive about $2 million of CARES Act funds, which we used to get us through the last year of the pandemic. And we also, the funds that were not able to use, we reverted that back to the Hardship Assistance Fund. So we look forward to cooperating and utilizing some of these funds for some of the needs of the Judicial Branch over the next 3 to 5 years under the American Rescue Plan, fiscal recovery funds, and we just want to let everybody in the Northern Agency understand that, you know, we support your needs too. We realize there's a lot of need, compounded, unmet needs for decades, as the Vice President has explained. Lot of needs. So we respect all of the questions and all of the points raised from all our local leaders, and we look forward to working with the President's office and the Speaker's office and all of the elected officials across the Navajo Nation to get the most out of this American Rescue Plan. I just wanted to say again on behalf of Honorable Chief Justice Joanne Jane that we appreciate this opportunity to be a part of these planning meetings, and as many more that we may have in the future, we look forward to being a part of that as well. Lastly, Jay, Stephen, Brian, Etsidi, Dashijine, Twahe Glini Nishle, Aro Ashine Edishija, Twatsotni Edishiche, Twachini Edishinala, Crowd Nenshle, Thank you very much for the time. Dr. Fowler, Shema, back to you.
Yeah, she asked, John Hitchanahin, welcome address. So, comments that they lie about Henniton, Ado Arj, Shaman Linidun, Daphne, Arnold, here and Hatabadon, Nito, Ashin Kodon, his Konosan, Hashin, that on Hodoljish. Ado ya na hen kidishni no le ade tatnas noslini ado bish bahasa an noslini hichin sato da isenot ado keyapanat noslini do na gloshipanat ado chapter coordinator, chapter manager, AEC that do yani ki hito all the behind the scene work that you do. We appreciate you, each and every one of you. We want to thank all the chapter officials, the council delegates that are tuning in. Based on the content of the information, if you could download the information to your phone or device, we have PowerPoint presentations that have been sent to the chapters. And if you have not, you can put it in the chat session and then we can forward that to you. We are using the WebEx system. So if you have questions during the 5 presentation, respect one another, and then we will respond as well. And we're giving each of the questions like a 3-minute question and another 3-minute response. So what that is ne the leshik edo shidna akodi kwa to up and take Casey bear sahne lehi be yit ado dik at ke huns e kwadon hil chahat e bahan now e kwado e ya na the dish kit no sino e di webex nini ajit na be it that or sleep kwa na adi kidi an later ashakate no so ya the page behan after the 5th presentation. I will share the phone number you will need to text and make the call to if you want to ask a question. Or in general or Kate nota. Or host ajit and or no what in a conde. Again, this is not our only meeting, though I did a sahaleta ajit nasko net ne jesla net leto le ado kodo hatahatsi hido ade sanat agi beta of any a dot hinge kedi a hittilzen will yani in hinge kedi edo shidna. We respectfully request for your on your comments, be respectful. And then this is not our first presentation. This is not going to be our only presentation. We're going to have many more webinars and sessions with the chapter officials and then also leadership. And then there are processes. But update on Navajo Nation Cares Act funding. Mr. Leonard Sosi. Mr. Sosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Fowler, and Yate President, Vice President, Northern Navajo Agency, chapter officers, officials, and staff. She korosadichi do tohanin shle nanishtaje bashishin ashini da shichiro na kredi naida shinale. Ko hashid ada kahishi beda kedo. Korodi ol kili benane ya abelagana kachishi bahashna no korodi CARES Act funding update. Today, we are talking about 2 funds, the CARES Fund and the ARPA Fund. I will be talking about the update on CARES Act funding. The CARES Act, also known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, was passed by Congress and signed into law on March 27, 2020. Before the passage of ARPA, the CARES Act was the largest economic stimulus plan in U.S. history to combat the adverse impacts of coronavirus pandemic. CARES Act gave direct assistance to Indian tribes, including the Navajo Nation, based on a formula developed by U.S. Treasury. The Nez Leiser administration worked hard to gather the data, and President Nez certified the data submitted to the U.S. Treasury portal. This resulted in the largest distribution of CARES Fund to an Indian tribe. As we go to the slide, I want to say that for those that are not able to see the PowerPoint slide presentation, I will talk about the amount of allocations received from the U.S. Treasury, the Navajo Nation Council resolutions passed and approved by the President, appropriating CARES Fund for various projects and services, the amount of appropriations, amounts that reverted into the hardship assistance account, and finally the hardship assistance itself and the CARES Fund balance remaining. The balance will change as reconciliation occurs and the remaining CARES amount, as stated by the President, is received from the U.S. Treasury. Going to the slide, you'll see 4 columns. The first column at the top are the allocations received by the Navajo Nation. On May 6, 2020, Navajo Nation received over $600 million as the first allocation. On June 16, 2020, Navajo Nation received the second allocation of more than $86 million. Then the third allocation received by the Navajo Nation occurred on June 18, 2020. And when you total all that up, it amounts to over $714 million that was received by the Navajo Nation as CARES Fund. Soon thereafter, the Navajo Nation leadership, the Council, and the President, the Office of the President and Vice President, went to work on putting resolutions together and legislation. The first one passed CJN 4720, appropriated over $21 million. The second resolution passed CJN 4620, added to $41 million. And then the big one, CJY 6720, which was the infrastructure resolution, was more than $475 million. And then the fourth one, CS 7320, was over $127 million. And then finally, CS 7420, over $49 million was added to the hardship assistance account. The Council, through Navigated Committee, passed Resolution NABIO 4920 in October. In that resolution, it reallocated the Navajo Nation CARES Fund to the hardship assistance. This was pretty much done because of the deadline of December 2020, and we didn't want the money to revert back to the federal government. So the amount that reverted out of CJN 4720 was over $5 million, and you'll see that in the last column. And then CJN 4620 reverted over $24 million to the hardship assistance account. CJY 6720 reverted over $194 million. And then finally, CS 7320 reverted over $67 million. When you add that up, it amounts to $292 million that was reverted into the hardship assistance account. And you add that to the $49 million that was appropriated in CS 7420, and you add the original amount of $1,000 to set up the account, the total amount for hardship assistance, it went to $341 million. The Office of the Controller used this amount to issue out hardship assistance checks. Over 294,000 checks or applications were received by the Office of the Controller. And out of that, 285,905 checks were issued. At the last report, the Office of the Controller indicated that 3,166 applications required remediations. These are applications that were received that they were having problems with the census numbers, phone numbers, addresses, and so forth. And so they're still doing remediation. So when you combine all of that, the amount spent was $314 million, and you have a balance in the hardship assistance account of $27 million. Out of the original appropriation, the amount yet to be added to the hardship assistance account is $19 million, over $19 million. These are monies that were given to enterprises and others that have yet to come back to hardship assistance account. And then you also have the open commitments remaining out there. These are obligations of the Navajo Nation. And then we had also an interest accruing on the account, and that adds up to $465,000. So as of April 26th, $44,673,573 was the CARES fund balance remaining. So it is that question on that, and then at 6% of the remaining, over 6% of the remaining amount of CARES fund remains. So it looks like Navajo Nation will be able to spend all the money, and probably no money will revert back to the federal government. Back to you, Dr. Fowler.
Kodo behind the ado kwete peso na soils mo ya holda. Halet at eno pelakana jia das kishita na sende John hito will ato or kishibin na hot abelakana catcher ko ochatas ano isato at the neck at a panahashnet at at and that akonde ochatas anako Johashin so they Beş bahasa anen lini sabe etana hudi tahe aje ya peso ye landa isli kodo olsen hichichete ane kon zaho kon o yushin sato ado chos ida oko kati zlin le anichitso aje na khana det ansa di ado chos idi johanne oko adon hitene lini peso sabe yo kedi ki sabe chen dahasya edo yana hasne Ako o hayu ein hitene and lini check dan lini bitch kolia akon the dot and hitat eda jo that ako di peso check kotal ya na kidneza tino atebetino ashla de milia jeto ba anas edneza tino ashla akone la check lini hata hastos do tal ya do sashin and hitene and lini jono chiteyos in Okota e o so bat na hun pando nas na te jiki ya katnana ya Chiage Garrett Silversmith now with Department of Transportation. Mr. Silversmith, you have the floor.
Good morning, Dr. Fowler. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, everybody. This Thursday morning, wonderful to join you.
Mr. Silversmith, we can't hear you now. Testing. Mr. Silversmith, can you hear us?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Go ahead.
I wanted to present to you this morning for the next 10 to 12 minutes about our responsibility and our involvement here with the Navajo Nation.
Mr. Silversmith?
Rescue
Excuse me, Mr. Silversmith. Mr. Silversmith, your voice is really choppy. We can't hear. We lost about the whole few seconds that you spoke. Let me go ahead and have you reboot that, and let's move to Mr. Chaco. I believe Dr. Yellowman, you're presenting for the Chief of Staff. Dr. Yellowman, are you on the call?
Now, Dr. Fowler.
Mr. Silversmith, go ahead and try again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Fowler.
Delay.
To appreciate the 24th Navajo Nation Council for their involvement, the Judicial Branch, and all our chapter leadership officials, and appreciate all their continued sacrifices and involvement as we take upon this American Rescue Plan. The second slide, I want to, as you heard earlier from President and Vice President, is prior in the CARES Act era, we created a Navajo Nation white paper, specifically focused on the provisions to federal laws or regulations, and it was submitted back on June 11, 2020, to the Trump-Pence administration. So with the involvement of the Office of the President, it emphasized that the change needed for our infrastructure, our health, anything that involved environmental compliance. There's a need to make those changes. Without that, our progress for infrastructure doesn't speed efficiently as we. So that white paper was submitted last year in June with favorable result. That we met with Department Bernhardt, and we exchanged ideas and so forth. We explained the contents of the transportation paper that focused on infrastructure purposes. Next slide. It's just specific topics within that infrastructure package specifically narrowed. We specifically centered on two topics. The first one was a list of proposed revisions in federal laws or regulation. The second component of this document was the list of proposed changes in federal policies. And as an example, what was contained in that document was the change in the NEPA process.
Hello, we're not hearing the presentation. Mr. Silversmith? Sean, can you hear the presentation?
No, Dr. Fowler, I think we lost Mr. Silversmith with connectivity.
Okay, I can go ahead and assist from here, Shiaj. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Nish adet tahad na okoti prop ben hit ninyo yo ben hit na hot e kondishi satoshi be de shwato ka ne chato edi ne okoti ti na gaj e khashin to e khodoti be his ani dan lini sato e be ndo asto ni holni to le okoti to at end I won't go through the whole thing okopia it needs for the return copies of approved documents Aron late grazing permit that BIA forms that hajobe has ani lini ein tatok asto hajobe be esahnane tleto jo edi kinahal kede enal tos grade isne enal tos grade e khatati liado oho bes eta alia ako ade kinahal kede na ani tlete tan lini ado jo Dr. Jill President Biden will yeniki e ad banda lishi be Biche Delia, Ako Ado Ada Eko, put out Nihis Anti the next Bikea Pakao Tati, no. Ako Ado Nasnana, next slide. A Kodo the net 18, Bahan net, Jo A Navajo Roads, emerge station. Ajidot Nag, so Sake Hanadilia, and another. We did complete another, the division did complete another white paper on behalf of the Navajo Transportation. Next slide. Within those topics, they did cover the ununified environmental compliance, consensus definition of road maintenance, our road funds usage of tribal routes, secretarial oversight lessons, and standalone tribal bridge program. Ni o yugo ni atin biche enda hasti ako edo kodoti ni ako tehi ada bana huidne. Next slide. The Navajo DOT approach to American Rescue Plan today a peso ahi halate on projects that can be ready within the next year. As the ARP funds, we are asked to, once we put our funds together, once we receive our funds, we have that we want to work on projects that are within the next year. Provide equal fund distribution, not only to one agency, but the overall 5 agencies. Improve some of the most frequently traveled worst roads. Auto yaga improve earth roads. Earth roads echa io yejo ad itin tahot naho. Dirt road chi aste na ajid na hasam baka ita atan tinigi. Ajido di peso nikichakol nahi to edo bahas zenda. Bahos zengo a sta a kodo agency between Hotato, Licho Hota, Abenahat, Dishiyaj, and Lini Division of Department of Transportation. Next slide. Next part is the miscellaneous Secretary of Transportation meeting, coronavirus relief and supplemental. Ako aje ni we did get 114.45 million to tribes. ABC Ishtiji. Akonde. You know, within our Navajo Nation, the Department of Transportation did receive 16.5 million for maintenance. Maintenance, just for maintenance services. Deputy, another miscellaneous is a Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs. And then also we did meet with Orlando Teller and then various other congressmen that we have met with virtually. So quite miscellaneous. Next slide. Some of the challenges and risks that we have, we won't go through all this, but you know, these are the first 9 that the Division of Department of Transportation have listed. If you look at one of them is more of a hiring, retaining our INDOT staffing. We want to work with prompt payment on contract and consultant invoices. Ako oh you go on ni intahas konde. Ado sato intahas ato nito jobe ishis pati nito hit is zolo ato nito hot kwa ebenahat ado in maintaining our new infrastructure. Ado na kone ike diki the final slide. The Navajo Nation transportation successes. You know, these are some areas of where our Navajo Nation INDOT, the next slide, please. And our INDOT have provided services and some of the construction areas are ongoing. And we want to appreciate Garrett and his team regarding the submission of the white paper. And it's not only for roads. The white paper consists of housing, utility, some of the projects that are ongoing, and really want to assist with some laws and really amending some of the RP fund to be the next 3 years that we will need to utilize. So, and then we will want to make that distribution equally within the 5 agencies. Auto criteria is ninido aton at and ni hilkhanet da kinahal kede ako kon sako pa nabikia si kitole shikedo shne ako nas na hote shije edi khele pa na ho jine Right now, we'll go ahead and move to our Chief of Staff. Lessons learned on CARES Act. Johashine Lago A. Bikit E Tado, Dan Hines Tado, Nido Bash Edni Ted and Teco. The old Sepeson, Hichakwal we have some of the lessons that we've learned from our CARES Act fundings when it was released to us. At this time, on behalf of Mr. Paulson Chaco, Dr. Yellowman will be presenting this presentation. Dr. Yellowman, you have the floor. Cha.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Dr. Yellowman. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate this time. I know there's some background sound behind me, but I am calling in from beautiful Rema, New Mexico this morning, and I'm doing some site visits with the chapter and the school on some of their infrastructure projects. So it's a very beautiful place out here. I want to thank our leaders, President Jonathan Nez, Vice President Leiser, the Speaker Seth Damon and his office, 24th Navajo Nation Council, and to Madam Chief Justice and to the Judicial Branch. Also want to thank our Northern Agency Council officials and our Northern Agency chapter officials and staff who are on the call. Shay Pearl Yellowman, and I'm the Division Director for Division of Community Development, and we have staff on the line. Just to recap briefly on the lessons learned. Next slide, please. We had quite a few lessons from last year, and some of the areas I think we want to make sure that we improve upon is we did receive the 714 million, and we had such a short period of time to implement that. And so we came across some time challenges. The CARES Act funds were restrictive per the U.S. Treasury guidelines, and those funds were for direct relief aid to the nation, and that's how we utilize those funds. Legislative branch, they experienced some challenges as well, and the executive branch, we had to really address some of our resources and capacity, project management, but also in that short period of time, we were able to provide and achieve and accomplish some of the much needed infrastructure related projects. We did encounter some situations with our internal procurement, and those are lessons learned. And so with the ARPA funds, we want to make sure that we are putting in place a system that will allow for all members of the ARPA partners and beneficiaries to benefit from the ARPA funds. I think we have some chapter coordination challenges. If you recall, we had to get past where our chapters were considered high risk, and we had to utilize other forms of subrecipient agreement contracts with some of our partners. So we want to make sure that we have those dialogues now, those conversations now. Those conversations have been happening through Nabikiatia and through the executive branch, and many of the division directors have been preparing for a better streamlined process and communication. Next slide, please. I think we look at some funding opportunities, and funding obligation period again was only 6 months. One of our main challenges were the federal guidelines. These were the uniform federal guidelines. If you recall, many of the chapters, we spent a time where items are the U.S. federal guidelines. So we want to have better conversations this time around where we know what are eligible items. We want to know what are eligible for the Navajo Nation as far as projects, as far as the type of projects. And so we want better access to that information. Again, we want to make sure that we improve upon our procurement system, and we want to make sure that we work with our legislative branch to really make sure that we have a time sensitive, and we're coordinating all of our projects. Again, the CARES Act funds were restrictive, and if you recall, the infrastructure projects had to be in use by December 30th. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 days prior to that time that then President Trump did the extension of the CARES Act. So that was a very difficult time right there to maneuver such a large nation, such as the Navajo Nation, and many of our projects had to be completed. And because that extension had not been signed, we had to deploy our construction sites. So next slide, please. Again, right now, probably our biggest concern or our biggest task right now is to expand our capacity to respond to the ARPA funds. Many of the chapters are working hard, and right now we're even trying to adjust the capacity at the chapter level. But once the funds do arrive, we're going to have to address our ability as a nation to respond to possible hundreds of projects to be completed during this ARPA period. And that's a task that involves all three branches, our Navajo construction companies, our procurement system, etc. And so we have to work together on that. Next slide, please. Some of the non specialty projects, we've been referring to them as warehouses and such. So we want to make sure that we are addressing some of these confusions or communication. And we just want to get ahead and make sure that we're communicating with the legislative or 24th Navajo Nation Council and working together on the not on the same page, and we want to make that a better experience, and just really vow to make sure that we do our part in communicating and messaging with to the chapters and to the Navajo people. And at the end of the day, I think we all want the same thing there. So I appreciate President's office, President and Vice President. I appreciate the communication and support from the Speaker's office and Madam Chief Justice, the Judicial Branch, and all of the chapters coordinating. Next slide, please. And then lastly, some of the things that have been mentioned already, President Nez mentioned this, is really addressing some of our procurement and our sole source, and making sure that we expedite this process. We operated in the emergency procurement last year. What ways can we improve upon that? Where can we do things better as a nation? And how can we be a little bit more forthcoming in the information needed to address these projects? So that's, I think, our ultimate goal as well. Of course, we all feel the challenges of the 164 process. Recommendations have been requested, and recommendations are being set forth for leadership to review. and there's many challenges, but it is a system designed for review. It's a system designed to protect the Navajo people's money, but we just need to expedite it. How can it work faster and better for the Navajo people? That's what we want to see. So next slide, please. And we'll just kind of wrap things up here. Again, we're really looking at project identification, utilizing the ICIP. We are encouraging many of the chapters to provide shovel ready, and those require, or those identify all of the clearances that have been made or that are necessary for each of the projects. But we all know that as a result of last year's pandemic and the pandemic that we're still experiencing, some infrastructure came about that has not been vetted. President Nez mentioned that earlier. There are projects that have not been vetted and have not gone through the planning and design phase. Those are still welcome. Those still represent the need of your community. But we'd have to work diligently to make sure that those necessary clearances can be made or within a timely manner. So we encourage the use of the ICIP. Next slide, please. Again, these are many parts of the construction, architectural design and engineering. We get support from CPMD, and we want to extend our technical service times to all the chapters and making sure that we are providing adequate and quality service to the chapters when it comes to these project preparation. So we just want to wrap that up there and let you know that these are things that we're continuing to work on and continuing to Dr. Fowler, back to you.
Ich habe schon für Ben Kitnahuin na Don John Kitnahuin that Kodosha Nas Nana Dolesh Kinahal Gade Navajo Nation Washington Office Senti Louis and Naholji. You have the floor.
Yet a bene, yet a Arnold Hosh, a St. Louis Unishia, Ishka has own Ishland or had so, but she's cheek, listen, Senate that she Dr. Chiki National, I could add the Ness and Ishland. Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to just say, well, I would like to just greet President Nez, Vice President Leiser, Speaker Damon, members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, Northern Navajo chapter and agency officials, and our general public. Good morning from Washington, D.C. So I will be covering 5 slides this morning. Just covering a few highlights of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARP. I think it's commonly referred to as ARP or ARPA. You're going to probably hear that a lot. But the legislation was signed into law March 11, 2021 by President Biden and is a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus bill designed to help the United States recover from the health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to the ARP, Congress had also passed the CARES Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act to help the federal government respond to the ongoing pandemic. The ARP is the 4th major legislative item in a list of COVID-19 pandemic legislation. There is over $31.2 billion available for tribal governments and communities. And again, for purposes for today's conversation, I'll be covering 1 to 2 resources in each slide. So first on our list is the ARP Fiscal Recovery Fund, or the FRF. $20 billion is available for tribal governments. $1 billion is to be allocated equally among the 574 federally recognized tribes. And for the remaining $19 billion, the Department of Treasury gets to decide how to allocate those funds. This is one of the major pieces, the major provisions within the ARP that is relevant to tribal communities. Congress made it clear that ANCs, or Alaska Native corporations, do not get any of the allocation. And this point was highly contested during the CARES Act disbursement. So under CARES, there was the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which provided $8 billion to tribal governments. So this time, Congress created the Fiscal Recovery Fund, which is more than double what CARES provided. CARES provided $8 billion. Now there is $20 billion available under the Fiscal Recovery Fund. So that's the FRF. So recently, the Department of Treasury completed tribal consultation on how to allocate those funds. And so we anticipate funds being dispersed to tribal governments fairly soon. The president did cover the 4 factors that the Navajo Nation would like to be considered in the allocation of those funds. And similar to the Coronavirus Relief Fund under the CARES Act, the FRF funds can only be used on specific purposes. For example, the FRF funds can be used to respond to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts. Funds can also pay to eligible workers of the tribal government that are performing such essential work, or providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential work. Funds may also be used to replenish lost revenues of the tribal government delivering essential services due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And lastly, funds may be used to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And again, these are the statutory provisions, and so we still await agency guidance. FRF funds may only be used to cover costs incurred by December 31st, 2024. I'm going to jump to the third line item on your screen briefly. IHS was allocated over $6 billion, and those funds are intended to support the delivery of healthcare and the operation of Indian healthcare services facilities. I'm jumping down to line item number 4. BIA is allocated $900 million. The majority of these funds will fund tribal government services such as public safety and justice, social services, child welfare services, and other related expenses. BIA will likely provide the majority of funding through the tribal government line, allowing tribes to reprogram and repurpose those funds for other purposes. The distribution will be based on tribal enrollment data. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first on our list is BIE. BIE was allocated $850 million. This fund will be allocated by the BIE director for programs and activities of the 183 BIE funded K-12 and tribal colleges and universities. BIE plans to distribute these funds using their existing data. These funds can be used to develop and implement a learning management system and related information technology. Funds can also be used to make facility-related improvements to ensure adequate ventilation and support for distance learning and social distancing. 2 days ago, The Office of the President and Vice President announced that schools on the Navajo Nation received over 200 million. So that's just under a quarter of the funds allocated to BIE under this line item. I'm going to go to the second line item. For housing assistance, 750 million will be allocated to housing and urban development. These funds will remain available until September 30th, 2025. 450 allocated for the Native American Housing Block Grant Program using the same formula. So our NHA should receive its respective share. These funds may be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, including maintaining normal operations and funding affordable housing activities. 280 million allocated for the Indian Community Development Block grants, and grants awarded under this line item may be used to address emergencies that constitute imminent threats to the health and safety and are designed to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. For both of these allocations, costs incurred after January 21st, 2020 are allowable. Next slide, please. Thank you. Last spring, to reduce the transmission of coronavirus in all of our communities, most of our schools and libraries shut their doors and transitioned to virtual learning. And today, many schools and libraries remain fully or partially closed. Students who lack home broadband access and were therefore caught in the homework gap before the pandemic now find themselves being unable to participate in any remote learning. At the same time, the closure of many libraries means that library patrons who were previously dependent on computer and internet access at their local libraries lost all broadband access. In response, Congress allocated over $7 billion for the Emergency Connectivity Fund to reimburse costs associated with eligible equipment for eligible schools and libraries. Eligible equipment includes Wi-Fi hotspots, modems, routers, devices that combine a modem and router, and connected devices. Eligible schools and libraries include tribal elementary schools, tribal secondary schools, and tribal libraries. The FCC is promulgating rules and recently sought comments on the Emergency Connectivity Fund for educational connections and devices to address the homework gap during the pandemic. Comments were due April 23rd, 2021, and more information will soon be available. The second line item, the State Small Business Credit Initiative, 500 million is allocated to this initiative, and it is to be divided equally among tribal governments using a formula established by the Secretary that considers employment and economic data. More information will be shared when it becomes available. Next slide, please. 498 million for the Homeowner Assistance Fund. This amount represents a 5% set aside for tribal governments to mitigate financial hardships with the COVID-19 pandemic. Funds may be used for mortgage payment assistance, utilities, internet services, homeowners insurance, etc. Applications are now being accepted by NHA. With respect to the Homeowners Assistance Fund, what Congress envisioned is helping homeowners who own their home stay in their homes. So eligible Navajo homeowners need not have a home on the reservation. So even if they live off the reservation, they still qualify for the Homeowner Assistance Fund. So if you know of anyone experiencing financial hardship and they need help covering their mortgage costs or utilities, please have them reach out to NHA. In addition, there are various grant opportunities. Two of them were covered in the previous slide, and 3 of them are listed below. 75 million for the Pandemic Emergency Fund, and these are grants to Indian tribes and territories and will be allocated by the HHS Secretary as they deem appropriate. Another grant opportunity, 15 million for that is funding for water assistance. Again, grants to Indian tribes to assist low-income households with income equal to or less than 150% of the federal poverty line. And lastly, $1 million for the survivors of domestic violence to support the National Domestic Violence Hotline Grant Program. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just to recap, the American Rescue Plan of 2021 was signed into law March 11th, 2021. And the reason why the date is very important is because the law prescribes a variety of deadlines for releasing funds to Indian country. For example, the Department of Treasury is required to disperse FRF funds within 60 days of enactment to the extent practicable. Similarly, HHS has a Native American language preservation and maintenance grants program. And according to ARPA, they are to disperse those funds no later than 180 days after enactment. For the BIE, which was dispersed days ago, funds were to be distributed within 45 days of the date of enactment. And for our small business owners who are interested in fiscal relief, there is the State Small Business Credit Initiative. And for that initiative, tribal governments that wish to participate in the program must file a notice of intent with the Secretary no later than 30 days after the date of enactment. And just to provide a brief update on that one, a few days ago, the Department of Treasury announced that they have yet to publish the form that tribal governments need to complete and submit. And so that deadline has actually been extended till June. So more information about that program will soon be available. But if you are a small business owner and you are interested in learning about what resources are made available to you, please visit navajoeconomy.org. Again, navajoeconomy.org. ARPA provided, it was historic because it's really providing a lot of economic relief to communities everywhere. For tribal communities, there is over $31.2 billion, and resources will be distributed via allocations or grant opportunities. So please learn about ARPA, learn about what how your community should see this money in the near future and over the next couple of years. So that concludes my presentation. Dr. Shima, Dr. Fowler, back to you. Thank you.
Aton hit nita shikado shna e kodon hapa ahonasan akonde wash indi zlata satsata hiot kalenta ita e sabeta no dit I aji kinal kejepela azli e ado hachidit ato trat stats dina hitratna hije bebent on nishjo konzago jadi tsena cares and hijidet ana e ad his target his tante zidije beho ande akonde jo eben na e kodo ben his na huina ara o honi kiuna ani linido besh mahasa anado ashi ni hito khatnas nil noshini tribal consultation with yeni shin that they no tsa ako e hit a e beson that the dot a nini jo e aji kinal kedeto yan hasne ako jo e ile e yisipik ho o ni ado di beso judet ado e dik at his hunting jija aja e ni hitcho koto ni tan hito ni dodo an hit e yata o you tribal entities they nick tijidan lini aja shi to hashin e beson lini and hitchidet ato le e koto ayan hasne ado dik atlan hasne ina bedet o kiltan so e kojo webex chido ini aja shi bi na adol kitole Di asa hanana zi e bikedo e na adikidi adolni. Ya Dr. Pearl Yellowman, out of Division of Community Development, Asian Kodon Hicha Hanana Zito Leshcha. Dr. Yellowman, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is James Sadikai.
Oh,
On
Yat
behalf of
Eshiyaj.
Dr.
Oh,
Yellowman, Yat Benjaminantat, Shemayaja, Dr. Feller. Dr. Yellowman is on another meeting right now with Rima Chapter, so I'll be filling in for her. Another so Kizi Adoshinanta. President Nez, Vice President Elijah, Chief of Staff, Division Directors, and Bishmas Andalanja Yahnantai, Speaker Damon, Chief of Staff, Aja, Inishigi, Arashi Chapter, Arihata so Kiziki, this is James Adikai from Division of Community Development, Aja Ka Nashwa. Aro in the na Shahare Yatsebi in the Skide, Manu Valley, Utah. So young, there's the Hasna. Not often there, Dutchini, but on the Shijet, Horigini, the Shichido, Topahata Chanel. What I, the Nensha, do Gehebek Ego. Oroshin de Kwaeya, Ada left from Division of Community Development. We do have a slide. Ishidaitas at the North in 80 peso Ade Nano Tahaki. I would say that unlinear with unlinear because 18 also be the key proposal do be the hazanita a 110 chapters a deep adolescent no in also sigi kaiti lasli. Next slide. A cohort is Anik how to plan of operation the Senegi Division of Community Development, titled 12, section 32, community, actually capital improvement process, capital improvement planning, and also the departments within the division, community infrastructure, housing infrastructure department, though capital projects management department, not so see the naha aro peso chera tet ahta yati not so see hat ya had nota a cohesive so na vejo any benda ajnshi cares at fancy a peso nano tahagin halo 80 American Rescue Plan but no la peso ala no tahanle ho oh sa ya aro shiva da she's a chapter a kohoti the ya a chapters that not so sigi a yahito a koho even na ya a that needs is a called timeline a internal timeline a liande a nasista from April 28th for proposal submission deadline. The new timeline is May 19th. Ako aro in the 80 behesani I see es odo legi the ARP legi ato beilnita. Ako dinat sosiahanite do bikido shin yahajo bik how adornis. Ako di kade ya a large and so cosigi infrastructure. A leadership, president or vice president, a Ikehola Celine aro in the Bishmas anti the la ya basically your kid la ya ton lin your kid John ya ani a coho ya bata so the projects gi in a kindlon ado on the tragen a house warn aro bathroom addition aro on the solar ningi shantin be the klegi aro on the warehouse they are the chapter dan le hot kid in the besos la bela zli bishmahas an the should not that hey heavy equipment baganda no these are all COVID related activities even nash justify dolnis urban nash base ben not on the stratna khiko Elias link next slide ROT the when not supposed to hand proposal submission process a chapter dogi shin a large ban sa kiso ihot na so si ya the nota ako hajoshi adorni the hisna nishanegi na so si hanite do bikido ya we will get back with the chapters next slide. We will get back with the chapters. There will be a grace period. We have our internal process to do that. A cohoation the Bahnaiti Kido 18 also Shinsa. I have a resolution that a Hido cost estimate. The Nash Ed has a negation has row nota. A coho aro and a code base orgation kitchen. Well, yaro. A cohoquashida had a she a hisn that dealish a cohobo honetson. A coho yati de could you has anigi infrastructure ninishin de ya ajitra in Kinanisha Community Development Division ninigi a coho arl ya there are other projects too broadband internet Navajo Nation Telecommunication Commission Aja Ado Anido Hinan Division of Transportation in Kisnahasna Aja Dad Nashiki a team bit at it she Aja sto a coho a bin the deal Nasho hot a big holia and then a co Aron the ocean ha yana nisha don't list a cohonat socianite. We're looking at 110 chapters. We're looking at maybe 300 projects or plus a coho base or yishindo so edo billini kid ben that on shiki because we will need administrative support in the for the field operation the that there's go ad yan dan tanito are in the contract so grants these sub-recipient agreements they to are the warehouse that we will need online professional services and we will need that type of assistance, technical assistance. So in order to carry out these projects, we will need the architectural, the engineer, and project management services. So on-call professional services. ako ito hota ishi hota bohnet zarolis ako chuk adndal nishiki the queen had a staff ako aro and the projects I thought that they ako cares projects that aneta been dashilish ako there was a good practice and I think lessons learned lini kodong hinan ya dahalne ani hot ako ayo bikha holya nahalan to execute these contracts and sub-grant agreements. Ako ide ya hot shi so kodo bana hasisnet lido lis. Ako aro in the na edikitoshi in the memo next slide in the memo ako ide baka ko there is a dedicated email address that we created, and do not hesitate to go ahead and email, contact us. On the phone number, my direct line is 928-871-6717. Back to you, Shemaya, Dr. Fowler.
Oh, yeah, Shiyaj Kodon Hichkanahin Anido Adanik Echiben Hichoin Ado yeah. And just to let everybody know that we have not received again the ARPA guidelines, nor are we informed of the formula that we will be using. On top of that, we have not received the funds. So Ishe Bahonasan, based on Lini Aton Hichahotneta, Ado based on that Zoido Ato, At Ende Behozi, the Kinal Kede Akwande, Jo O Kodo Ato. Based on his own now, but not idol, his archidon, in the equa, sudden Lenny be yell, hit other, but not the dish, kiss no single ya, a dick at the house, ida, uncle Jet. Webex, Siki, which that's the Edo to let they not only than Lenny, and yen hitchet, Hatzi, Koash. If you can text or call this number so we can start our question and answer session, 928-955-6645. 928-955-6645. Nast a Adonaki Tebi Nast a Ashtla Hastra Ado Hastra Di Adona Ashtla Eshi Bichhodosne Sadnat Agida Be et Osli Ado a Ketnanas Nesna Atikidi Ado Bikedo a Ya Ado Nakaho Jijo Ado Biga Habeta Ahiti Nino Yat Ejo Aat Paho. If your question was not answered, we respectfully request that you use the following email to have your questions answered. It's at arpa@nndcd.org. Again, if we don't get to you, we do apologize. Again, like we said, this is not the only meeting we're going to have. We want to continue having meetings with chapter officials, other official delegates as well. If we didn't answer your question or if we didn't get to you, please email arpa@nndcd.org. Ako ajashin hiche sa tosiswa. Ako audit sa kwasnao 928-955-6645. Although we also understand we do have some delegates that are hosting meetings or having meetings virtually with various chapters. Thank you for meeting and thank you for starting some of your plans. And then these are some of the things that we want to move forward with in conjunction with the monies that are coming in. Sa aja po East Nusbus chapter. We do have one question, and this question can go to our community development. Mr. Adakai, if you can assist us with answering this question on behalf of Dr. Yellowman, and if you don't have the answer, maybe we can make contact. The question is, how will NTUA and OEH assist with data sharing on requests for water, sewer, and electrical needs? Mr. Adakai?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Adakai.
I would encourage all the chapters to work with the NTUA, RO, IHS, OH for information on the cost estimate, feasibility studies, support documentation on the proposed project. They should already have some in place right now that are ready for construction. That is part of the process. Usually, as I mentioned, the Division of Community Development solicit proposals and gather the proposals for review. We usually also verify that information with NTUA and IHS or other utility companies. So, but it's a process where that things are like happening at the same time. But I would encourage that. Ako ado we got salita ishinit o nagay proposal be the ora email to sisto dinal associate ahita baka shindo bohonetsa. That way we can follow up when the timeline comes. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that response. Next, we'll go to Virgie Barker with Hawk chapter. Virgie Barker, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. *6 if you're using the phone. Kaanaho ato left. Virgie Barker. Miss Barker, are you on the line? If not, we'll go ahead and move to the next one. The next one is Deborah Yazzie with Shiprock chapter. Deborah Yazzie, Shiprock chapter. You can unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Hello, this is Deborah Yazzie, Shiprock Chapter.
Okay, Ms. Yazzie, thank you for joining us, and you now have the floor.
Yes, I was the one that texted in the question about the data request to NTUA and OEH, and my question was answered. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yazzie. I appreciate you being on this call, and as a new chapter official, thank you. Virgie Barker, if you can unmute yourself, *6. No response from Virgie Barker. We don't have any other individuals calling in for questions. Again, that number is 928-955-6645. Na adedesh kisno sino kwaja kwasnet 928-955-6645. Let them know who you are and what chapter you're representing, and we will give you the floor. We will take a couple more. Adon Junie because o tashi ado na ato kidado ado ni hepesh bahasa anen linishi aita aje ye ni hita hasne ado to adide ya islahitle ta ashin ta nasko ne islahitle to le hala ni hidne epa iti nido ishisndati nish etati ne ado koje base bahasa anen dan linita aje to ka aslahle bana ate ako aja shi sto na nishta hono adon hina tani dan lini sa ada khad shi kat nas na lita benagano ni hichete khato sa shayata adin tahas kai ado hihe ta badon ne shik edo shitne ado hot ani hilko a iki edo a nido ba adni edan ente jo yego nan hines khato nan hin a call hasto it aro le jonasko e ne yat ko nane kato yat nane dado e nitzen a kokodosha na hold ne DA Cove chapter Lorraine Johnson Roy with Cove chapter if you can unmute yourself. Lorraine Johnson.
Yes,
okay.
Good morning. This is Lorraine.
Okay, go ahead, Lorraine. You have the floor.
If the chapters are allowed to submit 3 proposals, and just by listening to Mr. Adekai, is it only going to be 1 proposal that will be submitted per chapter? Although we have a project, we're trying to start a laundromat where all the requirements, we completed all the requirements, but where would that fall under?
Thank you for your question. Mr. Adekai, could you please provide a response?
Yeah, this is James Adekai from Division of Community Development. The chapters are allowed. We listed 3 priorities, 3 projects. From the 7 activities that are listed. So in some cases, that's infrastructure. If there are other projects like economic development, business development related, Division of Community Economic Development, so so it's not any there's infrastructure plan, and then we will be doing a capital improvement plan, also similar to what we're doing based on no, maybe a 6-year plan. But you can go ahead and work on that proposal. We'll go ahead and assist to look for a funding source for that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, wow. Thank you for the response. And not a kiddo, sadly, banana. Ado, that's let me see. Tavina
Dr. Fowler?
Yazi. Tavina,
Dr. Fowler?
yes.
Oh, I do have a caller that called me directly, and I'm patching him directly through WebEx, so if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I think Tavina Yazi, right?
No, I have, ma'am? Oh,
Morning.
can I
Yeah,
switch?
perfect. Perfilia, can you hear me?
Yes. So we'll go ahead and go with you next. You have the floor.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Tobina. It's a contractor there.
The individual that speaks right now, I'll get you patched in.
Okay, thank you. Tavina, go ahead. You have the floor.
Our chapter president,
Tavina, chapter president, Sarah Lee, and Shetla Kande. Quite night the skills and it Lorraine night that kiddy ain't a keeper. Because chapter DCD that recommend 9 items no. But fato 83 gonda do so a proposed or no. That's all concerning the community at Sweetwater. The non-sao has a multi-purpose hat no kaya I thought so 17 acres is on hat here earlier that's to a kunna anadit bonnet so jo development to need the multi-purpose to senior center da and that don't no I don't need warehouse to propose daily ko AD the bahas ko AD that's a बहुत not something so yeah could on I this kid
Ich habe schon mal, Ado Tanshi Ada Hit in the Ada Ahas,
yeah
the Neta
okay
Hayuki, the Kedahat.
yay
Mr. Adakai, could you please provide a response to Ms. Lee? Thank you.
Yeah, young on it. This is James Arikai. I didn't know that kiddy. Twitter Kande. There are 7 infrastructure projects that we put on the list. Koho out on the three priorities. So what are your 3 priorities? I think the idea is that so the talk here proposal ya need the koho nus ego the to nas the clock so just for one home the IHS engineers that are done a 150,000 per home. So if you do the math, 10 homes, so it would probably go up to 50 million. Aro tego kites koho ite aro the amount the number of proposals, the amount of funds koho infrastructure plan no even nashota yati we're soliciting proposals. Yeah, if there are other projects that we also do a CPMD building again. Joe Ishiasati peso by Tokis. Ishahi, great ero lesto tite. Yego shint, I bahna etiketi ARPA money. There's ani yajer behaslo. The eligible activities no HOE atobi ilne great ero so. As I mentioned earlier, I would encourage to work on those building projects as well, proposals. We've been collecting proposals like bathroom additions, yeah. Talking about bathroom addition, we're estimating from the data IHS no 150 to 200 units. That's a big. That's what they're estimating. But in addition to that, there may be other projects out there that are not on our list or NTUA's or IHS or other utility companies that may be ready. So, I just want to elaborate that a little bit more. That's the purpose. Yeah, we're reaching out to the benefit of the chapters to see what kind of needs are out there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, she could not sad Linny Behanane Oko. Virgie Barker. We will go ahead and give you the floor. Virgie Barker with Hot Chapter.
Yes, Daisy, can you hear me?
Oh, you have the floor.
Dr. Fowler, good morning. Virginia Barker, people really call me Virgie Barker. Navajo Nation President, Vice President, Council Delegate, Aggie. Auto Executive Director, I'm very honored to be finally on a program right here. The other day, don't text me, second term with Hegi, take a coy and Nasa Crochet, welcome and good morning to everyone that's out there listening to our Navajo Nation President Nez, Vice President Lizer, constituents, council delegate, all the executive director of Tutina Mclingy, Ikidini, the Liqua, Shia, on like Kiva, Nadidish, Auto, Shahos, Dr. Fowler. But a proposal, Nengi, Archagodi, today are they done, yeah, the Haitian done, no aid on ya, a quite high, so me could my code. A lacon, Captain on a day out, so save on this case. Call a coy, go corny, Jim, they cares I can't at the arm the Nika or with the Olana, other needs some color or PPEs are area, nature Kodania, Ita, Parakado, she didn't let them lean it, saying that who can't hold G. Out of a NQA, then your power line extension. I 40 double Lundy, partnership, Shayat, Canal divide, and Aqua and Mission Day, coin in day. The creative on that or keeping Yagi, partnership, Yat, with NQA and a Canal divide. I did own I did Chido, what I see on the today, Dr. Fowler. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Shudder Kwanadin Kiddy, ko out ayat edahat ato di proposal at ka no ko I need no oh you go and das a tindo todo ista ado nana such a lana rajita e yego oh you go be nihiche na hot e akonde jo kodo ba ye kito dan his needs e kodo banda will net atcha tati no nasla nana hit tati ni hot kodo na big ti the shina pito zorto anat ani dan lini okotapati ni ado di into do continental divide partnership the nini do other question ye hadas zi ako do pahuint ido hit ada akita de di nistati ni tati no jo do sato akisna anneswilye ako do ajo tapa nata ko hehe ade ba hananin zi ishade ako asa ako ano juno best edon juno ihi ka ako yeah ko na idin kide do nasi dole dona here shik edos na ane da isno do nadil kida ko kodoshi chehona ne dole ako kodoshi che Lini kodo banat o tas ko closing remarks iki nakaile tole ado ajiti besh bahasa anan lina ajito sato ina nish sto ko skito do lishin kodo naka Mr. Willie should say do you have time to
Satsui?
oh
Oh, okay, you can hear me. Oh, yate. The con nas nille nihinant I you see here had dole li con de fanegi a donego dole aro di ya bendina nihinan nishwelo aro you see here had dole tago she a j twilly a she a tapahan sendo kachini bash chin she he eda shito kia an a dashanele aro she bas I didn't I see a nasha I don't understand a division director. Sally, thank you very much for the conversation today. We're looking forward to working with you all in regards to what we have set forth with the American Rescue Plan. Just listening into all the dialogue this morning, many of us have been understanding that the monies have not been allocated to us just yet. We're still working with what we have been advocating for, the funding formula, as well as also working with all of our leadership. And of course, this is where it starts from the grassroots, from our chapters, from local leadership, and assisting us and guiding us with what we have to put forth for the American Rescue Plan. And so as we work through all of the conversations, it helps us in gearing together and preparing all of the documents. You've heard Dr. Yellowman speak to the ideals of feasibility as well as also vetting of projects. And so that's our intentions as well, especially for economic development. We're here on Navajo Mountain, and what we're doing here today too also involves a lot of the outreach and communication with the chapters to assist in what they want to see and would like us to gear towards the conversation of use of all of the monies moving forward. And so I'm very thankful very much for the conversation because it helps us. And that's the intent of what we have laid forth throughout this whole week, going agency by agency. But this is just the beginning dialogue. Please reach out. I know they've shared the emails, the phone numbers, people that you can contact. If you can't get through somebody, use us as well. Get a hold of us to assist you on getting the word out and talking to the American Rescue Plan. Once those funds become available to the Navajo Nation, it's in our intent to work with you all on the expending of these dollars. And of course, in order to make that happen, these conversations need to be taking place. And of course, with the dialogue and the information that you provide to us, it allows us to have a better formula moving forward. And once those numbers have been communicated to us, we will communicate that out to you all. So I see here had dole li conscious so we are Arnold Scott the con nas nile are I couldn't hasido here had dole shitsui. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, che ado hanane zido closing remarks in live by here nitzen ado kodo present at the outside nihido ado na sini ado nas nele ado kayap ani no sini na tloshi ani no sini ado ASC the no chapter coordinator, chapter managers, all the behind the scene work that you do ahead hidi ni do left and hidi ni do left halan lede be nashidet nestra late chapter 8 they're the foundation of government dan hit need ako ado le ni bela aho and ahado bedo sato na ado bedo sato bezadi ato ot ya na hanits and nasko net nije benia kodoti office of the president and vice president no that bitni sato hoto dahoto netan hitno okonda ol kiliben naje oyon hitsa so la akonda do adid ya sahaleta do le nasko net nije na da hidil sek ebena da hidil nada hititi nil ado di nal doi do bash at nit ed a konden hits alto shikedo shne ye go be ta akoliado nasko ne ina be hena ta istinto le enitzen ako ta holiado on hichidon hize abetata de spalon hitra andas chiko na khe do ta akolia a ni ya hotzado le knal kreden do yise be ta hotni ni hichidon hize ado kapetata de spalon hite ninde ni he atin hichidon hize betata de spalon de khe Haosh osh laho okota hot eben na okota chitino le ado eta il en jojo di ne sto akon khanga sini beni na hin in hiti ne shik edosh ne do yota hino nidon hizaba ata holia ni hizad e de nido eta tesne ado hehe na khatso tato sendo el khatso tato sini ni ni he otla nazlande Hajobe da ahidi sotobe nani tobe nasnani kato enitzen. Ako huntogo eya kodo nihitrana da si zido kare koje base mahasa anani ajito eslahale ajita hanada do gis. Do ye go da hosyanshik edo shidne. At this time, we would like to adjourn the meeting. We'd like for you to continue to take your safety precautionary measures, continue wearing your mask, even though CDC says no, you don't have to wear your mask, but from Navajo Nation, we like for you to continue wearing your mask and continue to take precautionary measures. Ano hanta virus na dahatnan hina hawan banash adahatlay, beta akwasya asto, akawal sa do lashik edo shne ihehe do ya te do njono nihe da do ato di yin hilta